U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder says he's not leaving his post until his replacement is confirmed. Holder announced his resignation earlier this week. He began serving as the head of the Justice Department since the first days of President Obama's term. Over the last 6 years, he aggressively enforced the Voting Rights Act, addressed drug sentencing guidelines that led to disparities between white and black convicts, and extended legal benefits to same-sex couples. President Obama says Eric Holder believes, as does he, that justice is about how laws interact with our daily lives.
Whether we can make an honest living, whether we can provide for our families, whether we feel safe in our own communities and welcomed in our own country.
Work remains to be done, but our list of accomplishments is real.
There is no word yet on Holder's replacement, but some leading candidates include Solicitor General Don Verrilli and Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick. This is our topic this half hour. We want to hear from you on our Fox 26 Facebook page. You can also send a tweet. Use the hashtag Fox26 for life. Joining us live in our studio again is our legal analyst, Chris Tritico, our news analyst, Mustafa Tamiz, and public policy analyst, Jackie Bally. All right, what do you guys think Eric Holder's legacy is going to be?
Well, that's what we're going to talk about. You know, for people like me who make a living representing the criminally accused, we have found that Eric Holder didn't do what we thought he would do, and that's aggressively prosecute cases involving Medicare fraud and health care fraud, which is what everyone suspected was going to happen when President Obama took office. And so with 3 kids in college, I really wish he'd have done more in that area. But other than that, Mustafa Tamiz, you know, civil rights leaders are suggesting and stating openly that this is the best civil rights attorney general we have ever had. Is that his legacy?
That's his legacy. And on top of, I think what really gets, if you look at a metric of attorney generals, crime rates are down in this country, while at the same time there's less people in prison since the 1980s. That's a significant thing. It saves our tax dollars more than anything else, having less people in jail at the same time bringing our crime rates down. So the political nature of our system, the Republicans are going to accuse him of all sorts of things. There were all sorts of investigations, and just the day-to-day nuance craziness that we see in Congress and the accusation that we've seen. But if you look at where we are today from a perspective of crime, as an attorney general, crime's down while there are less people in prison, which costs us a lot, saves us a lot of money.
Most recently, you've had the Ferguson shooting, and I
Right.
think that he's had a lot of criticism from conservatives for the way he discussed that shooting in Ferguson. Is that his legacy?
His legacy is he's partisan. He injected his partisan in, and when you're the top law enforcement officer and you're telling residents and citizens, hey, I get it, I don't trust cops either, that's a problem. He injected his own personal partisanship in when he was doing his job. You saw that with the IRS scandal. You saw that with several of these accusations that my colleague is calling, but they weren't just accusations, they were things that were actually developing in his administration and during his administration. He was in the middle of it. He was held in contempt several times. So yeah, Congress is going to be upset when you're trying to interject your policy into the law instead of being the top law enforcement officer. That is a problem.
As a top law enforcement officer, he does get to set law enforcement policy, but I want you to respond to what Jackie just said about especially the IRS and the Ferguson, when he went out and said, I don't trust cops either, or words to that effect. You don't really expect that from the Attorney General, do you?
Well, what you expect from the administration is the attorneys bring calm to the street. And after he went and he spoke, people went home. The protests went down. And isn't that what we want from our Attorney General?
I think several FBI agents would be very offended by that statement.
All right, let me go to Sally. She's monitoring our social media.
Let's check in on Twitter, everybody. We have a tweet from Dana first. She is thanking Attorney General Eric Holder for his leadership. He says it made a difference, not just for the president, but for all of us protecting our vote. And then Sandra, she had tweeted radio host Matt Patrick here in town earlier this week saying, well, happy Holder is gone. She's scared at who will be the replacement. She says can only be worse.
Well, I don't, how do you gauge that? But you know, the president's going to pick who the president's going to pick, and I don't see the Senate blocking anybody unless it's just way out in left field.
Well, the Senate seems to find a way to, you know, there are Republicans in the Senate that will argue it and will fight it and will try to prolong any kind of confirmation hearing as they have with everything else. But I think that as we look at Eric Holder's history, what he's done on voting rights is a critically important thing. Protecting people's right is the fundamental part of our democracy, and he has done that.
And I think what our last viewer said when she said that it could be worse, because with this entire administration, they have this mentality of some of the laws we're going to enforce and then some of the laws we're not. And whenever he talks about voting rights, the way Mr. Holder specifically attacked Texas just because we said, look, present an ID, the same way you do when you go to the library, the same way you do when you do so many other simple things.
All right,
that was all of a sudden a problem.
All right, we're almost out of time. Respond to that about what Jackie was just saying about the voting rights.
Well, from a voting rights standpoint, it's been consistent that state legislatures across the country have been preventing people from vote or getting less people to vote by enforcing in these arcane voting rights. They're virtually poll taxes. And Eric Holder stood up to it, and he found a way to push back. And I think that's very important.
Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act was declared unconstitutional at the time.
Absolutely, because it was, although Section 5, part of it was unconstitutional, it was still enforceable in terms of the larger extent of the law.
Presenting your license is not equivalent to a poll tax. That's
All
ridiculous.
right, well, we're going to have to leave it right there. Coming up, we've got our roundup debate with the DA debate, and we're looking forward to that. That'll be in the next half hour.
Yes, we are looking forward to that. Candidates Devin Anderson and Kim Ogg will be here at 7:30, so stay tuned for that. Thanks, guys. Let's send it over to Caitlin.